Hey everyone, it is Michelle Badusky here. Now I'm sitting in Brandon, in front of Brandon University on a beautiful summer day, thinking about post-secondary education and what it could mean to our families and our communities if more people could actually afford to get a post-secondary education, not just at the university level, but in trades, college level, anything. We now know that high school is not enough, and access to education isn't always as easy as we think it is. Take me for an example. I grew up knowing that education was going to be the only way out of the cycle of poverty, abuse, and addictions that I had been living in. And when I graduated high school, that was my plan. I dreamed of going to university. I walk on the grounds of Brandon U and I go, I was meant to be in university. It never happened though. My grades were good. But once I got out of high school, or I was just about to get out of high school, I realized that I couldn't afford to go. I applied for some student loans, I looked at funding, and at that time I was told that I was not going to qualify for enough money to actually pay for tuitions, books, living expenses, even if I got a job while I was at university. And the reason why what I qualified for was so low is because my parents earned too much money. Now, my mom is a teacher, she's now retired, and my dad was self-employed. So they did have a decent income. Unfortunately, that money wasn't available to me for my education. And as a parent of 4, I'm not sure even now if I could afford to pay for all 4 of my children's post-secondary education and still have enough to retire on without living in poverty or working until I'm 70. So the reality is that we're putting the stress of post-secondary education on families, and we are demanding that they contribute as much as they can, perhaps putting their finances at risk or limiting what their students can do after high school. Now, I know things have changed since then. It has been a while since I graduated, well over 25 years. But I went online today and I realized that even if I wanted to go back to school, and just for the record, I looked into this about 5 years ago too, when I thought that I wanted to go back to university full time, and I punched in kind of all of our circumstances and our finances and realized that even then I couldn't afford to go back to school. As a mom with, a family, I couldn't afford it because we still made too much money as a couple that I wouldn't be able to get a loan. Now, this is a loan. This isn't free education I'm talking about. I wouldn't qualify for a big enough student loan to pay tuition, books, and help offset the income that I'd be giving up for my family if I went back to school full time. And that's the reality a lot of families and a lot of individuals face, is that we want to do better. We want to create a better life for ourselves. We want to get better jobs. We want to enter a trade or a profession. We want to do all these things, but we can't afford to. We can't afford to go to school. We joke around about how, the poor student eating ramen noodles, but that's the reality. Brandon University and ACC here in Brandon have food banks for their students. Food banks. We have students living in poverty that cannot afford food because they're paying for an education. And I think in Canada we can do better than that. Now, it's not so much giving free education to everyone, although ideally I think that would be an incredible thing to do, but it's giving access to education to those who are ready and willing to work for it. We need to loosen up the student loan requirements so that parents are no longer responsible for the majority of their children's education, because let's face it, some parents are not in a position to help their children for whatever reason, and some children don't have that parental support. So they're limited on what they can do because we're just have these expectations. The burden of a student's education should be shared, and it should be accessible to everybody. Education should not be just for the wealthy. It should be for anyone who wants it. And if you are in the middle of, if you have a family already and you think that you want to go back to school so that you can increase your earning potential, we're talking about affordable housing. Yes, we need more affordable housing units and we're going to work on that. But the best way to afford more is to earn more. And if you can't afford education to increase your earning potential, that's never going to happen, and we're keeping people down. What we need to do is raise people up by giving them access to the things that they can use to help themselves. And education is one of them. I want to see the federal student grant and loan programs change to give more access. The Government of Canada has already done that with students with disabilities, and looking at, history and accessibility to those programs. I want to take it one step further and start looking at increasing the amount of student loans and grants available so that we can raise our students out of poverty and we can get more people into education that want to be there. Whether they are fresh out of high school or whether they are 45-year-old mothers of 4 who have always dreamed about going to university and want to create a better life for them, their family, and their community. Now, that's what I think we need to do at the federal level to help post-secondary students and families. But I want to know what you think. What do you think the solution is to getting more people educated?